Hello doctors, welcome to another video today, and I'm delighted to share the news. I finally passed my AMC MCQ1 exam, which I gave in April of 2026, and I got my result and I've passed it. So I'm getting a lot of questions from doctors that are just beginning their journey, and this is more aimed towards those doctors that are starting from scratch and they don't have an idea where do we start, what are the resources to use, and how do we pass this exam, in the long term, basically. So this is aimed for doctors that so this video is going to be aimed for doctors that are starting from scratch, basically, and they don't have any clue of where do we start, what resources to use, where do we get the notes from, what are recalls, are they important, do we do mocks, where do we start from. All right, so I'm sharing the aim of the video is to give you a blueprint for the 6 months of prep before exam, and I'm outlining it for 6 months because that's what I believe personally is enough for those that have graduated recently or are in the medical practice, and for them to do all of the theory, the notes and everything, and pass the exam hopefully. All right, now to start off, I want to divide this 6 months into 3 and 3. All right, and the first 3 months we will be focusing on all of the big resources to build a strong base, whereas in the next 3 months we'll be focusing on all of the shortcuts, the revision notes, and just to build up to the exam and preparing yourself mentally, as well as focusing on all of those values, those notes, important points, and getting a good grasp of it. All right, now to start off, the most important resource that we have is going to be the handbook of AMC MCQs. So a lot of the doctors, they say they call it the blue book or the MCQ book, which I believe is the most important book for you to start your preparation, because even though it's a very old book and some of the answers in it are according to the current guidelines wrong, or some of the stems are missing some information, however in the initial days it's the best resource you can use to get a hang of how the AMC is going to ask you questions. All right, so the handbook of MCQ, so what you should do is that do at least one system, half a system, or at least do maybe 50, or start off with 30 and move on to 50 MCQs per day with their explanations and answers. All right, and the reason I say that you need to finish this in the first 3 months is that in the next 3 months we'll be doing this handbook again, and there's a very good reason for it. In the AMC MCQ exam, a few of the questions, maybe 2, maybe 5, are going to be exact copy of the questions that are given in the handbook. Maybe even the pictures would be the same. All right, and the answers, the options could be the same, they could be slightly different depending on the stem of the question. But the main goal for you to go over these MCQ questions twice with the explanation is that firstly you have an understanding of the MCQ, of how the MCQ exam is going to be, and secondly, if they repeat the same MCQ, you don't waste a lot of your time understanding that MCQ and reading it, because every single second in the actual exam is going to count. All right, along with doing your handbook of MCQs, you need to finish theory topics. Now when I was starting, there was not a lot of information of what topics were important to do, what should I do, and that's why I did not spend a lot of time on John Murtagh's 9th edition. And what I would do is that right now there's a completely free checklist of important topics that is available for free on the Telegram group, and that's it's free to join. You can follow the link in the description of this video and join the Telegram group. We have a lot of free notes, we have a lot of free resources, and especially for doctors that are starting and they don't have any understanding of where do we begin. And then while doing this theory, according to the checklist, I would move on to eMedicis AMC MCQs plus the clinical MCQs. So now the AMC MCQs are broken down into 2 different categories. Now the first AMC MCQs, which are I think around 210 or 211 MCQs, those MCQs are completely free when you register with the AMC, whereas there's also a medical clinical MCQ which is paid, and they have about 4,000 questions in them, but not all of those topics are important. Now if you only select those relevant topics, it's going to be about 3,000 MCQs in them. All right, so do those MCQs as well, plus start off with the AMC MCQs. I believe I finished them in 2 days because of how less they were. All right, now moving on to the second question bank, which is Emedex. I did Emedex in the very beginning, And my reasoning for that was that maybe I'll do a lot of the MLX questions and get a good grasp of the topics, but which was not true. But it did give me a good grasp of how the STEM is going to look like, and what are the options, and how do we go through them, how do we eliminate few of the options, how do we pick a few options. All right, now moving on to one of the most important resource is going to be the last at least 6 months. I would suggest to go for 1 year recall, and again you can find the recalls in the Telegram group as well. Now the reason for that is that you will need to understand again how these STEM questions are going to be, what's important to study, because not every single detail of the topic is going to be important. Recalls give you an idea how do you study them, and especially if you can get recalls that have explanations of why the answer is correct when the other options are wrong, it's going to be it's going to make a huge difference in the way that you go ahead and pick those answers. Have you focus on these resources in the first 3 months, and then moving on to the shortcuts, or what I like to call the important notes. It's going to be again in the last 3 months. I want you to focus on the handbook again, and then the foundation notes, or what we call revision notes. Now these foundation notes or these revision notes are very long notes that have been condensed into smaller messages. I like to keep them as messages because I can access them anywhere. I can access them on my laptop, my phone, my iPad, and that way those are accessible to me at any time, and it's easier for me to find them because a lot of the apps such as Telegram have a search feature, so it's easier for them to find out. And then again, these foundation notes are available completely for free on the Telegram group, and again the link is in the description below, and you're welcome to join it for free. So this high yield notes are going to be notes which are maybe 2 to 3 lines, and they cover all of the important aspects that are related to those important topics. Now you can get them you can make them from yourself, but they are very time consuming, so I also bought them, and you can buy them from the Telegram group for 49 USD. Again, the link for the Telegram group is going to be down in the description below, so you can just sign up. And especially 1 month before your exam date, I would suggest get these high yield notes. These are very important. And then one more resource that's off topic, but I don't see a lot of doctors talking about, is going to be of exam week recalls. Now essentially these are MCQs that the students that attended the exam maybe a day or 2 days before your exam date, they're going to come and tell you what questions that they get, what topics were they of, and was the exam easy or was it difficult for them. Now leave out if it was easy or difficult for them, but concentrate on the questions and the topics. Now starting with the questions, that maybe 1 or 2 questions, maybe sometimes even 5 questions from their recalls would come in your exam as is. Sometimes they're going to give you maybe the same STEM but change the few options. They're going to give you the same STEM but go ahead with the treatment, and then ask you what's the better option or the next step in the investigation or the treatment. So that's how you get a better idea of what are the questions. Now most importantly, other than the questions, is that you realize what topics they're asking. Once you find out what topics they're asking, you'll realize what's important and how is the MCQ, how is the AMC asking their questions right now. And for that, you realize what topics you have. So you would go back to these high yield notes and study those topics from them, and that's what I did, and that helped me immensely while I was answering the exams. Now coming to mocks is something that you need to make sure that at least 3 months before the exam you start doing 2 mocks at least per week. All right, per week you need to have at least 2 mocks per week, and you just don't jump in with 150 questions. You need to start off with 75, then you go on to 100, and then you finally go up to 150. Now with 75 you'll be aiming for half the time, with 100 you'll be aiming for 2/3 of the time, and then with 150 you go for full time but minus 10 minutes. Always remember that the actual exam is going to be maybe more difficult, so that you need to have more time for you to be able to complete these 150 questions. All right, yes, so this is the complete blueprint that I followed and which I'm sharing with you. And if you're new to the prep, you can follow this, get the free resources again from the Telegram group down below. If you have any questions, message them to me on the Telegram, drop a comment, and like the video if you really enjoyed it and you want to see more content. Really sorry the camera went out in the middle, but yeah, that's the video for today, and hope you guys have a good day. Bye.